When you get married, you are going to discover that as powerful as sex is, even sex will become a responsibility. It's when you are not yet married that demons are touching your emotion. You say, hey. When you get married, you will know that demons were involved. You saw the lady's leg, you say, Jesus. When you get married, you will discover that that leg can be on your head. You will be burdened. Because Eros is motivated by what you consider beautiful. A point will come, it will diminish. You will now discover that
there's no day I don't laugh. I laugh in the morning, laugh in the afternoon, laugh in the night. I laugh about your tie, about your coat, about your haircut. Because he that seated in heaven shall. And where am I seated? And so what should I do? If you are not laughing, where are you? Somewhere.
Oh, I deal with
so refreshed.
I told you, after we married, 3 months later, we had a little quarrel. And I told myself, what? It's not this lady that saw me and was relating with me as an apostle. Is now arguing with me. I went back to understand what was going on. You were arguing with me? After 3 months? My God. I told myself, no, this can't continue for how long? I can't take this. My God. I will show you the purpose of marriage. Then I will talk this to you. You will know something. I locked up. Partake. Do you know me? Do you know me? Me that can be in one room for 3 months. You try me. You will suffer here. When I locked up, in the evening I sat down, she walked towards me. I just started reading something. She now knelt down and apologized. It looked like I was a devil. I now discovered that I was more carnal. Hey! It's been a long time. I felt so like a demon. Hey! I became ashamed. I didn't know what. From that day, I tried to avoid every problem until I managed this carnality. I discovered ego was ego. Nobody taught me that I was full of ego. You come out, everybody say, hey, man of God, you have mysteries. But there was carnality. You are not a man because you boss around. The person who says sorry is stronger. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because the way Jesus showed strength was to die. I learned something that I didn't read in any book. I've read a lot of books. It wasn't there. And so God began to teach me. I remember when I wanted to get married, I saw a damsel that, even the most spiritual, we are men. Being a man is a body. I said, we have the order of Elijah. We are like Paul, we don't marry until I beheld the damsel. And the moment I beheld her, my senses, everything about me that has to do with intelligence went to work. Because my goal was to woo her. I wanted to come into intimacy, to walk with this creature, because it looked as if I was no longer surviving on oxygen. Something suddenly became more relevant than breath. And if this person is not around you, you want to suffocate. What is going on? I now saw that man was created with a deficiency that makes him want to exist only through the gateway of intimacy. And so intimacy is one of the things that gives relevance to life. But you see, the intimacy you enjoy with a physical person is nothing compared to the intimacy you enjoy with a being that is eternal. So woman or man, depending on your gender now, actually comes to mirror something that actually has its root in the spirit. And so when God allowed us to marry and to partner with one another, is to give us a glimpse of the experience that is available when we begin to have intercourse with the Holy Spirit. Are we together? Love has 3 cadres. The first cadre of love is affection. The second cadre of love is understanding. Understanding is superior to affection. If you start working with somebody and you journey for a while, if you can't understand yourself, you will discover that the lack of understanding will destroy the affection that once existed. Because affection is superior to understanding is superior to affection in the ladder of love. And then when you move a bit further, you will now discover that the third ladder or the third rung on the ladder is trust. Trust is superior to understanding. If you don't trust somebody, you will discover that understanding will collapse. Affection will also collapse. And so when you are even talking love, you cannot really explore love in its fullness unless as you marry somebody and live with a person for a long time. That's why God commands people to love who they marry. And He doesn't really endorse who you love before you get married. If you do and God chooses that person, it's an added advantage. And if you have studied love also, apart from this ladder that I've explained to you, there are 4 things you will discover about love. Because there are 4 words for love in the Greek. The first word for love is phileo. The second word for love is eros. The third word for love is storge. And the fourth word for love is agape. Love is deeper than the feeling. The word phileo is a kind of love that is created by circumstance. And that kind of love runs on emotion. So if I'm in a place with somebody for a while, because that location kept us in that place, we are going to discover that there are few things that connect us. And so because of that circumstance that is created, we will begin to bond in a way. That kind of love is called phileo. If you change that circumstance for a while, that love will begin to die. Because that love is orchestrated by a circumstance, and that love runs on emotion. If you change the circumstance and you alter the emotion, that love will die. It's called phileo. Friendship operates at that level. And then you have what we call eros. Eros is romantic love. Romantic love is motivated by your definition of beauty. It's an affection that goes in the direction of what you consider to be beautiful. And so, for example, if you consider a fair complexion to be beautiful, when you see somebody that is fair, you will get to develop that kind of affection towards that person. But over time, you will discover that because the glory of man diminishes, a point will come when that affection won't mean, that look won't mean much to you anymore. And ask those who are married, they will tell you. When you get married, you are going to discover that as powerful as sex is, even sex will become a responsibility. It's when you are not yet married that demons are touching your emotion. You say, hey. When you get married, you will know that demons were involved. You saw the lady's leg, you say, Jesus. When you get married, you will discover that that leg can be on your head. You will be burdened. Because eros is motivated by what you consider beautiful. A point will come, it will diminish. You will now discover that eros is not enough to bond you. That's why those who run to marriage because of sex, after 1 month, they run out. And the people you meet before you get married, most times, is phileo and eros you feel for them. The higher kind of love is called storge and agape. Storge is companionship. Storge is built by understanding. Storge is not dependent on emotion. That's why people who have understanding, when they become old, at 70, you will see them hold themselves, walking together. It's called companionship. There are 2 things that bet storge. One is understanding, another is covenant. And covenant runs on blood. So the relationship you have with your brother and your sister is called storge. That love originates from your bloodline. And so you will discover that you will live with your brother for many years. Even if you fight, a point will come, you will need that person. And if you are quarreling and the person dies, you can't sleep. You will not feel it in your mind. It will be a weight on your chest. If you have lost somebody before, you will know. Because that covenant is breaking. And so that detachment will create a weight on you that you can't define. Because that kind of love is covenant oriented And it is also based on understanding. It is when you get into marriage that you can build storge. There's no way you can build storge before marriage. Because marriage is prosecuted on covenant. And that covenant is enacted on the altar before God, and it is consummated on the bed of affection. And then as you walk with that person over time, you will now begin to build understanding. You will now discover that if that person can discern you and you can discern the person, a kind of love that you can't define begins to grow. You just know, it looks as if you become dependent on yourself so much that you can't do without each other. You can be together for 2 days. There's no Eros operation. There's no sex. But you are gisting and talking to yourself as though sometimes you even gossip with one another. What's happening is talking. You will discover that in one day you talk to yourself more than 20 times. And it's not that initial. This time around is dependence. Companionship is being formed. But it is rooted in what? Understanding. And understanding takes time. And it's also rooted on covenant. And there's no covenant before marriage. So you can't enter the realm of storge until you get married. And then the final one is agape. Agape is sacrifice. Agape is self-denial. The reason you can build agape is not even because you have a connection with that person. Why filio is generated by circumstance, eros is generated by your definition of beauty, storge is defined or generated by understanding and covenant, agape is external. Agape is dependent on the level of trust and obedience you have for another force outside of that marriage. That's why it's called sacrifice. You don't build agape because of your connection with the person. You build agape because of your both connection with a superior being. And so most of the things you do with that person may not be because of that person. It will be because of your loyalty and submission to that being that binds you together. And so many times when you go through a relationship as strong as marriage, you will discover the reason you will stay will not be because of the person. The reason you will stay will be because of your submission to God. That's why it is in worship and it is in loyalty to spirit beings that agape, the subject of agape, can be defined. And you cannot build agape until you marry somebody. Forget about the card you wrote some romantic words and sent. Sacrifice is deeper than card. You know, when I started contemplating marriage, the Lord asked me, what is the purpose of marriage? And the thoughts of the things that were taught began to run through my mind. You know, we hear things like, marry who you love. It's about happiness. Make sure you are happy. And all of these are very beautiful. But the Lord said to me, he said, does marriage sit on these things? Because you can be happy with somebody that is not going in the direction of your destiny, if you have not found your destiny. Because the things that make men happy are strange. The things that make men happy, they are strange. And God began to give me some secret things that I've never heard preached anywhere. You know, he told me the first purpose of marriage is to give you the privilege to be conformed to the image of God. He said that is why you will not find who you want to marry on the street. You will walk on that person. You will cultivate that person. And while you are cultivating that person, yourself will be cultivated in the process. So you may be looking for a woman that is patient. Meanwhile, her impatience is what will help you to learn temperance and endurance. So when God points at your wife may not have patience. So if you are looking for marriage to be happy, and you think happiness is about patience, you will miss your wife. Because the idea is that you will be conformed to the image of Christ. Meanwhile, the endurance that you don't have is our patience that will teach you that endurance. So God will deliberately allow you to marry her, and it may take you 6 years to cultivate endurance. And you will learn it by teaching her. That's a school of the spirit. So he said a higher purpose of marriage is for you to be conformed to the image of God. So that happiness will be captured in fulfillment, not in excitement. It is when you have cultivated her and the glory in her spirit begins to emanate. That's when you'll be fulfilled. It's in that fulfillment that you'll be happy. And I never saw it anywhere. So I began to You know, I used to love tall and fair damsels. And my goal of happiness was to find a woman without blemish. When I went to pray, I gazed into the spirit and I contemplated a tall and elegant damsel, flawless in expression. He said, what I'm looking for is for you to be conformed to the image of God. So it changed my paradigm. So when the purpose of a thing is not known, the abuse is inevitable. He told me the second purpose of marriage is to preserve divine heritage. He said the reason you could trace Jesus back to Adam is because God trapped that divine order in a bloodline. So when men hide things, they hide them in a bank. But when God hides things, he hides it in men. So the choices of marriage is to help transfer eternal ordinations from one generation to another. So it is God's way of hiding dimensions of the spirit. So God will prefer you marry someone with a godly heritage than to marry a diva. Because God is trapping an ordination. And only in such vessels can eternal ordination be captured. I said, wow. I was not ready to marry. If I married 5 years ago, my wife would have been a goddess. But my ministry would have ended by now. He said the third purpose of marriage is worship. He said because it is in finding your wife that you will learn how to bend your will. Because worship is not a good song. Worship is the ability to conform to the will of the Father. So it is it's not what I desire, it's what you desire. Not my will, but thine. And he said it's in marriage that you will discover that. I said, wow. So when the purpose of a thing is not known, the abuse is inevitable. He said the fourth purpose of marriage is so that you can learn the mystery of oneness. That's the mystery that holds the Godhead together. The Father, the Son, and the Spirit. The ability to live and become one. And that was why he said, for the woman, love is submission. And he said, for the man, love is sacrifice. So everything the woman has, she relinquishes it. And it looks as if she's vulnerable. And then everything the man has, he commands the man to lavish it on the woman. So at the end of the day, nobody owns nothing. And as they grow on that corridor, a point comes, the woman is lost in the man and the man is lost in the woman. So the mystery of divinity can be manifested in their home. So when you step into their family become heaven on earth. Because God dwells there. You know, when you come on the altar, you can coordinate yourself. You can't do that with your wife. Your wife knows you. So when you are trying to act wise, they will say, this man is a hypocrite. I know. And when you look at the face of the woman, you can tell who that man is.